Well, before we get into that,
I'm just like a little confused about like the whole like.
not liking feminist thing.
Yeah.
So here, why don't we get everybody's answer to this first? Do you consider yourself a feminist?
I don't know. I don't
Wow,
think
you're
so.
really far from the mic. It's like really.
I don't know. I
far.
don't think so.
Okay. All right. Cool.
To what the standards are today in society, the definition for a feminist, no.
Okay. What about you?
I consider myself a feminist, but not the man hater that the society
Well,
perceives it
we
to
can get
be.
into that. Do you consider yourself a feminist? Well, are you beat down over the convo with Andrew?
We're very tired.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's a long trip
No,
back to Hollywood.
I'm not tired. I'm fine.
Okay. Do you consider yourself a feminist?
I don't know what the actual what would you say for the definition of feminist?
Well, there's different definitions. Feminists define it differently. I have a charitable definition, and then I have an actual definition. My charitable definition would be a movement for women's advocacy.
It's just like
That's the most charitable I can be.
It's about equality between man and women.
Is
Us
it,
human beings.
is it? Okay, we'll get into that, but let's let her answer. So,
I'd say I
who
don't.
farted? Maddie? How dare you, bro? Okay, I'm kidding. She didn't fart.
I bet it was you.
It was Morgan. Just kidding. It was Nick. Just throwing my entire crew
It was
under the
Andrew.
bus.
It was Andrew.
Yeah, transcontinental. Well, not continental. Transcontinental. It could still be transcontinental fart. Andrew just wafted it from his abode.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. I don't know.
He's out of it.
Yeah,
I would-
women's advocacy movement, I guess.
I'd say I don't know.
Andrew,
enough about it.
what's your definition, Andrew? Your charitable
So
one.
feminism, I would say, is the movement towards the egalitarian society between men and women, equality, and the rejection of patriarchal systems.
Could you please define that one word that you used at the beginning? My English is not too good.
Rejection?
No.
Oh,
Patriarchal?
No.
Egalitarian.
Yes,
Andrew.
egalitarian.
Just equality.
Okay.
Equality between men and women,
Damn,
and the
that
rejection of
stinks.
patriarchal
What
systems.
is it?
Okay.
I can't smell anything over here. Do you smell something?
Morgan, you
Not
smell
on
it?
this
I don't
side.
smell anything.
Okay, all
We're
right.
clean over here, y'all.
Okay. Oh, hold on.
I'm so glad I'm not dating donated $69. He's strong, handsome, hung like a bull moose. Perfect in every way. You get to his house. In the corner of his bedroom. Dun dun dun. A fully loaded AR-15 firearm. What's your reaction?
Oh boy. Okay. Here, just really quick around the table on that.
Gotta go.
No, okay.
I don't even know what to say to that. I really don't.
Okay. Strong, handsome, hung like a bull moose, perfect in every way. In his bedroom, there's a AR-15.
Okay.
Would you?
And the fully
I'm not going to
loaded
run the
one.
other way.
Would that disqualify him
If he had a
from-
gun?
from dating? Yeah.
No.
A fully loaded one though?
No.
Fully
Sure.
loaded and
No,
not
he said
fully loaded.
AR-15.
It's
It's
Yeah,
like
but
big
like that's what
guns.
he said. Like,
Yeah, it's the big one.
well,
No.
it's a fully
big gun.
loaded.
Unless,
they're not
like,
even
what's the
supposed to keep
intent
them
behind it? Is he
separate.
gonna, like,
The
is he a
bullets
harmful
on
dude? Or, like, is it just the
No,
fact that
no,
he has
there's no
it?
additional qualifiers.
Oh,
It
then
just-
no.
He has a fully loaded rifle, an AR-15 there in his room.
Okay.
You see it. Is that a problem?
No.
But yes for you. What about you?
Oh, it's not a problem for me.
Okay.
I would just ask about it.
L.
I have a boyfriend, so I wouldn't be in their room. But for the podcast's sake, if I personally, I've had a lot of trauma with surrounding guns, and I just don't feel comfortable around them. I wouldn't not want to be around that person. I would just ask them politely to please remove the gun from from my visual being able to see it.
Mm-hmm.
I would just respectfully ask.
I personally think everyone should own guns, so I would just question why is it out of the gun safe and why is it loaded?
Do you own a gun?
Personally, I can't because I'm 19. I can only I want to.
You
I wanna have,
can own rifles.
Yeah.
Don't you-
yeah,
And
exactly.
shotguns.
That's what I was gonna say. I can own a
Just not
rifle, but I wouldn't
handguns.
want to own a rifle personally. I'd want to own a handgun, and I want to as soon as I turn 21.
You can own a handgun at 19.
Maybe it's California.
No,
Yeah.
even in California, that's a federal law. Federal law says that dealers can't sell at 21.
But you can own it.
State laws say 18 is appropriate to own a handgun. I don't know in California specifically, but it wouldn't surprise me if you could at 18.
No, I'm from Texas.
What about you?
It's like
I'm
16.
from Australia, so this doesn't really apply because we don't have guns.
Well,
Let's say
you're living in America.
That's fine.
America. Okay.
America.
All right. All right. Thank you. I'm so glad I'm not dating. Really good to see you back in the chat, man. Appreciate your TTS. Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you. Back to the question, the feminist thing. You were asking for clarification on egalitarianism.
Which is equality.
Essentially, right?
Right?
Yeah. So, feminists?
I'd say we're pretty equal. I'd say just maybe raise women's pays more. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Feminist?
Nope.
Yeah, I'd say no.
M-Dog? Nair?
No.
Nar? Okay.
Yeah, I can agree with the
Wait, say
equal
no
pay.
for us?
No.
It's not all
Clear
Australian.
Every time I hear an Australian accent say no.
like that, by the way.
Every time I hear an Australian say no, I just think of the H2O mermaids show.
Oh my God, that TikTok guy.
Okay. So,
I love how you guys talk personally. It's like it's so
beautiful.
It's satisfying, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
yeah, so, you're the only feminist, or
I
forgot?
guess again, because like I
Nobody
just
else is a feminist? I
so
guess? Okay.
because to me it's
Oh,
like
you said it's about equality, right?
so it's about us being equal as human beings.
Are men and women not equal?
So because the majority of the society was built on by male rules, and I specifically brought up the examples that I'm not going to go into the whole financial or societal thing at all. However, for example, in the medical terms, there's no equality at all. Up until 1993, women could not be a part of medical testings. That's only then they specifically required women to be part of medical testing for any diseases. Other than that, women are just considered mini men and are given just smaller doses of medications and are not treated for the diseases.
Okay, so I can
the
give
same.
you two rebuttals to this argument.
Please.
The first rebuttal would be, it's very dangerous to experiment medically on somebody who has the potential to be pregnant.
I have
That's
heard,
the first rebuttal.
I've seen that argument, but then
It's a valid one.
It is a
Yeah.
valid one, but
This-
then it's
Right.
like you can't really learn about what the bodies need.
Okay.
Then.
So then the second one is it really like some sort of privilege to be in such financial dire straits that you're going to get experimental drugs pumped into you?
So it's not about the experimental drugs. It's about
But
the
do you
fact.
think that's a male privilege, that males are privileged because they get medically experimented on? Do you think that's evidence
No.
or do you think it's actually a privilege that we actually raise up women to such a degree that we want to protect them from being medically experimented on?
Okay, I can see how you may think that, and from that perspective, I can see the viewpoint. However, from a perspective as a chronically ill woman, not a single male doctor could ever diagnose me. And in fact, I've been misdiagnosed so many times. I've been giving so many wrong medications that have only worsened my symptoms. So it's like, specifically the medical care, and I'm only talking about in the United States because that's what I've had the most issues with. It wasn't literally until last year that a female doctor actually was able to diagnose me and prescribe me the things and in the way that actually helped me. So, and only because she experienced those things herself and she had to experiment on herself. So it's like just the overall system of the whole healthcare system in America is just
and then I
terrible.
think Andrew's actually made this other argument too, is that due to women's fluctuating hormones that tend to fluctuate more than men, whereas men are a bit more constant.
Exactly.
Right, but it's better to test it on them for that reason also.
Except then it affects women in a different way, though, because of their fluctuating hormones. Because taking some.
Okay, so but looking at the totality, it's still not clear to me if it's some sort of benefit to, like, it's some women are oppressed because
I
they
didn't
don't
say
get,
women are oppressed.
well, then women are disadvantaged because they don't get medically experimented on.
No, women are disadvantaged because they are less likely to be diagnosed with what they're actually with the condition that they actually have. They're more likely to be.
Is there any facts or data about that?
Yes, actually, there's plenty.
Well, there might be plenty of data that might suggest that there's more medical experimentation on men. However, it's not clear to me. Hold on, let me finish. It's not clear to me because of this that somehow it translates to the if a drug is passed and it's been tested more on men, that women are going to have like disproportionately more negative health outcomes because it wasn't tested on them as much.
Well, this is kind of silly anyway, because when you're talking about testing standards, you have to follow what are called ethical practices. So if there's drug experiments which are going on, it's going to be voluntary. So what they do is they do paid voluntary drug testing. So what will happen is you take part in some sort of experiment. College kids do this all the time for additional money, sometimes for 21, 31, 40 days, sometimes a year. Men are more often the people volunteering.
I volunteered in college.
Yeah, okay, but that's not what, okay, it doesn't matter if you volunteer. What I'm saying is that men are more likely to volunteer. Do you know what more likely means?
Yes, I do understand.
Yeah.
However, it's like, I'm not talking about specifically the testing. I'm talking about the entire system and what the doctors have been taught in the past that it still moves through today. It wasn't until 1993 that women were required to be at least like 40% a part of the testing.
Is this your best example of inequality between men and women?
That is not my best example.
Give me your best example, because these small, minor examples are kind of uninteresting to me.
Okay, well, except as I've said, I'm not going to argue on it. I was just wanting to know everyone's opinions because I'm just simply confused. Why is being equal as human beings?
Why 30 years ago there was disproportionate medical testing being done?
Over 30 years ago, and then even still right now, there still are, because a lot of doctors are still following through with that.
Okay, give me a better example.
Example of what?
Inequality between men and women.
Except I told you that I only wanted to talk about the medical.
That's the soul.
Okay,
that's your
I'm willing
soul.
to talk about the medical.
I mean, we've already...
Because you have personally have mentioned that you have heard a million things before. So I'm not going to tell you anything that you haven't heard before and that Andrew hasn't heard before. And I'm not here to argue about it. All I know is my experience and experience of a lot of other women who have gone through similar issues.
You said 30 years ago, though, so that's quite a while ago.
So actually, only recently, Biden, like in 2024, has passed that it has to be 50% of the females in the testing, and actually taught, and
yeah, that's a regressive policy. So this is a completely
as a
regressive,
woman who is chronically ill, I disagree.
Policy to then introduce your political bias into scientific testing. The thing is that not all of these experiments, for instance, inside of medical fields would even require a demographic of 50% of it to be women, or 30%, or even 10%. It's all experiment specific. And not only that, when you're doing medical experiments, try to remember that you can adjust for these other variables. You can find men, for instance, who have hormones which are similar to women due to all sorts of different reasons.
Except,
they can have the same amounts of estrogen as a modern woman. And so these the experiments that you're talking about do not demonstrate a social bias towards women. There's other factors for why this occurs. One such factor is they don't volunteer as much. Because of ethical testing standards, they just don't volunteer as much. They don't give blood they don't do any of this stuff as much.
Okay.
How would that be biased? That seems like women are basically selecting themselves out of that.
Also, I just want to piggyback on Andrew here really quick. So you said that Biden, it has to be 50-50 with the medical experimentation?
I'm not 100% sure.
That's what you said.
I've read the document. I'm not sure if it's a proposed bill or
Would
if
you be in
it's
favor
already
of that
passed.
proposal?
If you want,
I would actually.
Okay, so let me ask you a question on that. So, assuming there's a medical experimentation, a case study, whatever it is, but they're just incapable of finding a 50-50 split, wouldn't doing this prevent medical experimentation from even occurring? So it would prevent advancement in medicine.
So no, because
if a study
let me
could
answer
not-
that. So it wouldn't, please, because you've asked me.
Go ahead.
So it wouldn't because it requires. But the thing is that if you can't find them, you can still do the testing. You just cannot use that same findings on the opposite person. You can only use the findings that you found on that type of person, and that's the key point. The fact that women have been considered literally mini men and just been given smaller doses of medication that could potentially harm them and have harmed them in the past, that male doctors misdiagnose women all the time.
Right, but this precise example you've given me, I can just turn around and say, for the decades or centuries, maybe not, they've been doing medical experimentation for a long time.
Lol Paladins donated $69. DEI almost killed President Trump. Get rid of
You
forced
guys gonna
gender
just stand
requirements.
back there and talk and
DEI
be
is a
on your
cancer on our
phones?
society. Meritocracy is the only way to run a
Like the whole
business or our
fucking show?
government.
What's meritocracy?
It's fucking rude, man. Super rude. Okay.
It just means the judgment value is assessed on your merits, how good or bad you are at a thing.
Yeah.
So to give you a quick, easy example of this, it would be, I can hire you or I can hire your sister, and I hire your sister because she's better at the job than you. That would be merit.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Welcome.
That's a cool word. I like it.